Welcome to the video. We're going to be taking a look at a brand new template which is now available on the website. Links are provided in the description box below. So this is a Cubase Pro template for East West's Hollywood Orchestra Opus Diamond Edition for Cubase Pro. And for those of you that purchased my previous Play Edition templates, this will be a free update for you. When this was released, you should have got a marketing email with available misspelled badly on it. If you haven't received that email, please do get in touch with me with the contact information provided in the description, and I'll be sure to send you the upgrade link so you can download your version. First of all, let's take a look at the general setup of the template, and then we'll talk about a couple of the features just to give you an idea of how you go about working with it. So when you load up this project file for the first time, you'll notice that on the left you'll have all those colorized folders. And if we collapse those folders down, you can see here that we have a master folder for each section of the Opus Orchestra. So we have one for woodwinds, brass, strings, and of course percussion. Now all of these colorized folders represent an instrument from the orchestral section. So we have, here piccolo, flute, flute 1, flute 2, etc., etc. When you expand one of these subfolders, you'll find a load of instrument tracks which are pre-disabled in the template. So that basically means that when you go to load up this project file, it will load instantaneously and it won't start loading any samples into RAM or cause your CPU to have a heart attack or your computer to erupt into flames, because this is a very, very large template that does require a hell of a lot of RAM and also a very beefy CPU if you were to go ahead and activate everything in the project, which isn't a wise idea, to be honest. So how it's been built is each instrument track has one instance of Opus loaded onto it, and also one patch preloaded into Opus, in accordance with what the track name is here in the main project window. To start working with the template, you just simply cherry pick the patches you wish to work with from each of the instrument folders, right click on them, and then go to enable track. And what will happen is Cubase will activate the tracks, it will load Opus onto each of these, and also load up the patches as well. So if we expand one of these instrument tracks here, you'll see that we have Opus and the legato slur patch loaded up. So that means we can just start composing straight away and recording things in and not worry about any additional setup. Now, obviously, some of you like to work with Keyswitch Patches. So at the top of every section folder, you'll find a dedicated folder for key switches or instruments that have key switches on. So when you expand one of these, you'll see here we have, all of these available for you to start playing with. And when you enable one of these instrument tracks, you'll also notice that I've actually gone ahead and created the expression maps and pre-applied them to all of the key switch tracks in the template. Now, you may want to play around with the latch mode to shift where you want these key switches to live on your piano if you're playing things in live. One of the drawbacks that I've found with this library so far is that some of the instruments have so many different articulations you can switch between. It's kind of hard to actually place everything on your piano where you're not going to accidentally trigger something that's within the note range. So ideally, what I would recommend doing is developing your own expression map that is using a universal setup. So you've got all of your shorts dedicated to one key, longs to another, etc., etc. And then just go through each of these key switch tracks and just take a look at what you're going to use roughly more than other things. And then you can turn off the stuff you don't want. And then when you're setting up the mappings, you can right click on here and assign these to any key that you wish for when you're working with your expression maps. How expression maps work: if we open this up, let's just score in some notes. Well, not that one, because the dogs will come running. Okay, so we have our notes in here, and what you can do is you can have a look at the available articulations here provided in the articulations and dynamics lane, and you can just simply, choose your pen tool, or if you're using the normal selection tool, hold alternate on your keyboard, and then you can come and score in what changes you want to happen. So if I want the effects here, and if I want a major run up here, etc., etc., and then when we play this back, it sounds like hell. Another way you can choose the articulation changes, which is a little bit more user-friendly, because again, with there being so many articulations for some of these, this lane at the bottom becomes so overpopulated. It's a little bit annoying to work with some instruments, in all honesty. The easiest way to do it is just to select the notes you want to apply a particular key switch to, or articulation change, and then go up to the info line here. If this isn't showing the info line, you need to go to the very top right, click on this little icon here, and check info line, and then it will bring up this box. And then from the articulations section here, we can just simply click on this, and we'll see all of the available articulations listed, and then we can just choose what we want those notes to be assigned to, which is an easier way of doing it, in all honesty. That sounds crazy. Anyway, moving on. How has the template been routed in the mixer? Let's take a look. First of all, I'm just going to disable this track. One of the problems when you're building templates and you're using individual instrument tracks with an individual instance of Opus and one patch loaded on is that it creates a hell of a lot of audio channels in your mixer. So for one instrument, instead of just having one fader to control the volume for the whole instrument, you're going to have like hundreds of audio, well, not hundreds, but quite a lot of audio channels. So when we activate the clarinets here, we're going to have an audio channel for each one of these pop up in our Cubase mixer. So how this has been dealt with in the template, if we bring up the mixer here, let me just uncheck group channels and just show the instrument channels. So all of the individual patches for the instrument have been routed to their own instrument group bus. So that means you instead of having all of these audio channels to play with, you've just got one fader that will control the volume of the entire instrument. Before I show you that though, one thing to quickly note while we're in this view is that for all of the split articulations, I've actually gone ahead and trimmed the gain for each individual channel to try and get it to around minus 12 dB for all of the split patches in the entire template. This is just to make things a little bit more consistent, because there are a few patches where their maximum volume is nowhere near what some of the other ones are. So this is there to sort of balance that out a little bit. Having said that, this is not a fully pre-mixed or balanced template. I've just done all of the tedious stuff for you to try and speed up your process when you get to the mixing stage. Going back to what we were talking about just, if we go to the filter channel types up here, essentially when we're working with this template, we can uncheck instrument channels and completely get rid of them from view, so we don't have thousands of audio channels in the mixer, and then we can just use group channels. So when I was talking about all of the individual articulations are routed to their own instrument group, here we are. Okay, so these now represent the individual instruments. So if we want to turn down the entire volume of the clarinet, we can just do so from here and do any processing to it. Each one of these instrument groups, buses, whatever you like to label them as, have also been treated with some high cuts and low cuts to remove any unwanted rumble and some of the high-end noise that you may find throughout the library for each one of the instruments. And these have been done on a per instrument basis, meaning that I've actually listened to the instrument and rolled off where I think's a natural, safe place to get rid of all that stuff that you don't want. By the time you get all the way over to the percussion groups here, something to note is that there are no high cuts and low cuts applied to the instrument groups, because for the snare drums here, this is controlling the volume for all of the snares that you might have activated. So what I've done is actually applied the high cuts and low cuts to the individual audio channels to tidy them up. Now, all of these instrument buses have been routed to their own master bus, which is pinned to the far right of the mixer in these purple channels here. So if I want to control the volume of entire sections, so for example, if I want to up the overall volume of the brass section, I can simply just increase the volume of the fader here and it will control all of the brass instruments. And then obviously you have one for woodwinds, so if we want to control the woodwinds, we can do so, strings and percussion. And the beauty of using buses instead of VCA faders is that you can also apply additional processing to them, so it makes mixing much easier. You'll also notice here on the far right, next to the percussion groups, we have 4 effects buses. And these are basically our reverb buses. So we have one for brass, winds, strings, and percussion. There are no reverb plugins loaded in. However, these have been set up ready for you to apply your own reverb to, and all of the instruments have been routed to their respective reverb bus. So when you want to start working with it, you just simply come up to your sends. For example, we want to, I don't know, apply some reverb to the violas. We can click on the sends here, activate it, and we can choose how much of the violas we want sent to that reverb bus with our reverb loaded on. Now, how these buses have been routed for the effects is that these have been routed to the master groups. Okay, so this means that when you're controlling your section volume, it's also going to control the volume of your reverb to keep everything in check. Because if you don't do this, what you'll find is if you turn down, let's say, the strings entirely, all you'll hear is the reverb of your viola because the actual viola instrument has been completely turned down. So it's just to keep everything consistent, so all of your volumes remain relative to one another when you're working. Now, when we get to the main stereo output here in red, you'll notice that there has been a limiter applied. This is just a very basic setting to protect you from any clipping. You will need to alter this or use a completely different plugin when you're working on the mixing stage of mixing your orchestral piece. It's just there as a safeguard, basically. So this concludes looking at the Opus template, which is now available. As I said at the start, for those of you that purchased the original Play editions of the Hollywood Orchestra templates, this will be a completely free update for you. If you haven't had your link, please do email me and I'll be sure to get things sorted out for you. I hope you enjoy using the template. If you have any feedback, feel free to send it my way. And I also would love to hear what you guys have been coming up with using this template.